Well, President Trump has always valued loyalty on his staff, but his new comments about disloyalty have gotten him in a world of trouble with people who he was trying to woo. I'm Scott Ott, and this is Bill Whittle Now. And Bill, I want to read the president's particular tweet that has raised this kind of concern among American Jews and, of course, the Democratic Party. Mr. Trump says this: where has the Democratic Party gone? Where have they gone where they're defending these two people, meaning Representative Rashida Tlaib and Representative Ilhan Omar? They're defending these two people over the state of Israel. And I think any Jewish people that vote for a Democrat, I think it shows either a total lack of knowledge or great disloyalty. Well, Bill, I was looking at a story in the New York Times, and the Times is suggesting that this term of disloyalty is something that has been used in the past to smear Jews. It's an anti-Semitic slur that indicates that they have greater loyalty to the state of Israel than to the United States. Bill, is that what it sounded like to you?
Well, that'd be an excellent example on the part of the mainstream media if that wasn't exactly the precise inverse of what's going on, right?
Well, you know, even if I'm trying to see it from the perspective of the progressives or the Democratic Party and be provocative in my questions, I'm unable to see it that way in this situation. It does seem to me clearly that the president is saying that if you're being disloyal to the United States, not to Israel.
No, he's not saying that at all. He's not saying that at all. And this is yet another attempt to connect Donald Trump to Nazism, make him the big orange Hitler man. And also, by the way, since the words Russian collusion have lost some of their sting due to the fact that Mueller spent 2 years and wasn't able to come up with anything, we have to find a new bogeyman now, and that new bogeyman is white supremacy. You didn't hear much of that term, did you? About 9 months ago, 7 months ago, 6, even 3, 4, 5 months ago? Never heard it before, but you hear it now, and you're going to hear it everywhere now, because this is what the new strategy is going to be. So if we're going to make the story about white supremacy and how evil that is, and continue to use our own decency against us, then we have to make sure that every single thing we do ties Donald Trump into the Nazi Party, and the only difference being that he hasn't killed anybody, which I consider to be a somewhat noticeable difference between the Trump administration and that of Adolf Hitler. So what Donald Trump is saying is that clearly, I don't think there's any question about Tlaib and Omar and their anti-Semitism. Point number one. Point number two, they're Democrats elected by Democrats. Point number three, most Jews vote Democratic. And point number four, why is it that Jews are voting Democratic when Democrats are electing openly anti-Semitic Muslim extremists, not even extremists, Muslims who I've seen video of Tlaib basically saying her goal, and the goal is 100% Islam in the United States of America. I've watched her on video say it a couple years ago, but nevertheless, there she was. So what is it about Trump what has Trump said that is either demeaning or wrong? The reason people's heads continue to explode with this man is that he speaks the truth that no one's allowed to speak. And that's why he's the president, and why I think he's going to be reelected as president.
Let me reverse a previous error that I made early on. I got lost in my double negatives. What the president was saying in his tweet wasn't that somebody who votes Democratic, a Jew who votes Democratic, is being disloyal to the United States. He was saying they're being disloyal to Israel. And so the slur previously was that a Jew has divided loyalties, being disloyal to the United States. And so I'm sorry I flipped that. But even American Jewish organizations, and you rightly point out some 79% of registered Jewish voters vote for Democrats or are registered in the Democratic Party. The New York Times has seemed to think that they can latch onto this dual loyalty or this disloyalty concept the way they latched onto the terms invader and invasion when it comes to the southern border, and suddenly make everything that Donald Trump says related to purported white nationalism.
What did I tell you? This is the newspaper that wrote a fair and accurate, not a fawning, not even a positive, a simple fair and accurate assessment of a speech that Donald Trump gave. And when they were fair and accurate for the first time in living memory, their readership went through the ceiling. They had to have emergency meetings at the New York Times to clear up this effing mess. And then they had to change the headline to something more demeaning to make the people that read the New York Times, the few hundred of them that still do apparently, satisfied that their rabidity has not been lessened today. So I don't give a damn what the New York Times says or what the New York Times prints or what they think. And every single day that goes by, fewer and fewer people do. That works just fine for me. The more of this they want to do, the more, I was convinced years ago, but just as any other bell curve, the more of this that they try to do, the more people are going to wake up to the fact that this has not been a newspaper for a long time. And therefore, it, like CNN, is essentially the audiovisual department of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And then the American people can decide whether they want the politics of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party or not. But Donald Trump has done something that no one else in this decade or in this millennia, really, that I've seen. And when I say millennia, it's not that I've been alive for 1,000 years living on the blood of third world children. I simply mean since the year 2001. I have never seen anybody come out and speak the truth as a politician. I've heard Rush Limbaugh do it. I've heard other commentators do it. But I've never heard a politician do it. And since all of the damage and destruction that's been done by the progressives and all that they continue to want to do is predicated on our acquiescence to their agenda based on our decency and our sense of not wanting to be called racist or white supremacist, the idea being so repugnant to the average American that they're willing to do virtually anything to not get that label slapped on them. This is how the left works. They appeal to they use the decency and the lack of racism on the part of white Americans to shame them into agreeing to policies that they never would have agreed with otherwise, because they would rather agree with bad policies than actually be called a racist or a white nationalist or supremacist. So watch for that term home, boys and girls. You might want to write that down on your little Captain Astro pad that I issued to BillWhittle.com members. And the coded word now is supremacy. Sorry, white supremacy. You're going to see a lot of white supremacy until that term wears off, and then they'll find something new. But until then, this is the word of the day now, and this is the word that's going to be used, and this is the strategy that's going to be used, and every single thing that Trump and his supporters do, propose, say, or whatever, in the interest of the entire United States, not just white America, in the interest of protecting the United States, will now be seen not as Russian collusion or as any kind of a greed thing or anything like that. No, it'll be now it's all going to be about white supremacy. That's the new buzzword. And when that buzzword is used up in the same way that 1%ers were used up and all the rest of it, then the left will move on to some other slur and smear to cover the fact that nobody wants what they're selling. And so they have to basically throw mud at every other product on the market in order for them to have a chance to sell their miserable, wretched, depressing, sad, and fear-inducing tepid little philosophy that was obsolete 100 years ago.
Bill, when it comes to Jewish voters, Republicans have to be scratching their heads and saying, how am I losing to these guys? Meaning not the Jews, but to the Democrats. I know a situation. Well, we are, because we, meaning the Republicans, 79% of Jews are registered Democrats and are voting for Democrats.
Trend?
But Bill, here's the situation I saw happen clearly. I do not know the trend, so that would be a waste of time for me to address that question. I saw a particular situation in my own district a number of years ago where there was a guy who was head of a Jewish community center who opposed the Republican who was running for the Senate. One of his friends managed to arrange a one-on-one meeting between this Senate candidate and this head of the Jewish community center. At the end of that one-on-one meeting, the head of the Jewish Community Center and his wife maxed out to that Republican candidate when it came to donations. And what I wonder, Bill, is how have conservatives and Republicans, who are the people responsible for getting the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, who are evangelical Christians are in vast numbers in the Republican Party, and they support to the death their brothers, the Jews, how is it possible that the Republicans have failed to get this message across and that the majority of Democrats or the majority of Jews still vote for Democrats?
That is the question. The biggest part of the answer is the Republican Party's utter inability to simply say what we believe because, again, the people who we're entrusting to say what we believe as a general rule are politicians, and politicians are kind of antithetical to the entire conservative movement anyway. So I wouldn't exactly count on them to be the paladins of limited government and restrictions on government power, both of which you would think would be mightily admired by the Jewish people more than anybody on this planet. Restriction of government power and the arming of a population. You would think that would be absolutely foremost on their minds. But as many people have pointed out, when we talk about the number of people, when we talk about the percentage of Jews that vote for Democrats, we're looking at a large numbers of people. This is not my term. This is the term of American Jews, conservative Jews who I've talked to about this. And they say that Jewishness is their ethnicity, progressivism is their religion, and I think that's pretty much exactly correct. But nevertheless, I don't imagine there's very many American Jews who don't feel a profound connection to the state of Israel. And having watched Obama hand pallets of cash, hundreds of millions of dollars, to the mullahs in Iran so they could continue work on their nuclear weapons in order to destroy Tel Aviv, let's say, I think that the election of Tlaib and Omar and all the rest of them are going to affect the 2020 presidential election in some significant way. I don't think that you can continue to see this increasing anti-Semitism on the part of the left and this increasing support of Israel on the part of the right and not have some Democratic Jews say, all right, maybe we're not even going to vote for Republicans anymore, but we can't pull the lever for this. But the main problem, as you point out, is simply that we are absolutely incapable of doing the simplest thing possible, which is taking that message right into a synagogue, sitting down and speaking to a rabbi and his family. No audience, nothing, and just saying, listen, this is what we believe, this is what we all believe. Okay, we're not trying to convert you. We're not trying to do any of these things. We believe in Israel. We believe in Israel is our ally in the Middle East. We believe that Israel is a Western country in the middle of a large backwater. We support Israel, and your party that you vote for continues to not only drop support for Israel, but actually begins to continually and rapidly support the people that are trying to murder your countrymen. And we don't understand that. Can you explain it to me? And if we did more of that, we'd have situations like the one you described, where a formerly Democratic voting prominent Jew heard the other side of the story and immediately maxed out his donation to the Republicans. And this is the part that's unbearable for me, is that this failure on the part of Republican politicians to make this connection, which is so simple and so clear and so undeniable, that it's enough to make you just want to, just throw up your hands. And that's why we do the work we do here. We're carrying a burden that really should be carried by half of the country. I mean, who's making this case? Who's talking about this? A handful of conservative commentators are constantly out there bringing up this issue. And when Donald Trump tweets about it, that means that it gets some attention. And when he makes a statement that is that morally clear, because that's what that tweet was, when he issues a statement with that kind of moral clarity, no matter how clumsily it may be worded, the left is in full-blown panic mode because Donald Trump has reduced this situation to its essentials and essentially largely obscured the glamour, and by glamour I mean spell, that the left-wing media has put upon American Jews for the last 50, 60, 70 years.
Ladies and gentlemen, the members at BillWhittle.com are people of all faiths and of no faith, and their loyalty goes unquestioned to this day. Not just their loyalty to this enterprise, because they continue to fund it and the production of some 48 shows a month, but their loyalty to the Republic. We are grateful for their encouragement and for their support. We'd invite you to join them by going to BillWhittle.com and clicking that Become a Member link. For Bill Whittle, I'm Scott Ott. Thank you very much.